Okay, good morning guys. We're going to pick up from where we left things yesterday. Thanks for letting me know that the video is working. Okay, so the last little bit that we looked at yesterday on page 102 was when Blanche is talking about her death and gives that detailed description of dying from an unwashed grave. Okay, so importantly, immediately after that is where the doctor and the matron enter onto stage, and it describes them as having the gravity of their profession is exaggerated, and they have the unmistakable aura of the state institution with its cynical detachment. Okay, and it's that phrase cynical detachment that really shows us William's attitude towards their profession. Remember that comes from his experience of mental health institutions with his sister Rose, and the fact that they're cynical suggests that they're uncaring, and the fact that they're detached clearly presents them as being emotionless. Obviously, for the audience, this massively elevates the tension. We've known that something is about to happen, but we haven't been sure exactly what, and this makes it clear to us. Okay, that dramatic effect is heightened by the fact that Eunice is then whispering to Stella and saying that must be then. Okay, we can see Stella's discomfort and the tension for her when she presses her fist to her lips. In contrast, Blanche is rising slowly, so it seems that she is potentially aware that something's not quite right here. She's also described later on as being tense. Okay, and again there's this whispering that takes place. Okay, so initially Eunice whispers to Stella, and then we can see the whispering carrying on, so that really gives us a sense that something is going on that Blanche isn't aware of. Obviously, as the audience, we're going to be feeling anxious for her, and we're going to be pitying her at this point. Eunice tries to make it seem like it's okay. Okay, you've got the adverb brightly to describe her response, and she also presents it as if it fits in with Blanche's fantasy. Someone is calling for Blanche. Okay, to which Blanche replies, it is for me then. Okay, and there is being italicized. Okay, really shows us that she's still in this fantasy world. She still seems to think that potentially it's going to be Shep, but there does seem to be an element of uncertainty too, because she says she looks fearfully. So again, the adverbs being really important in the stage directions there. She looks fearfully from one to the other. Okay, so clearly there's a sense that she's unsure. And then we get the Varsuviana faintly playing. Okay, as we know, that is a motif that goes all the way through, fits in with the plastic theatre, and reminds us of her imminent tragedy. She asks the interrogative, is it the gentleman I was expecting from Dallas? So clearly she's not sure about it. And Eunice's reply, I think it is, Blanche. Okay, remember when somebody hedges something, it implies a degree of uncertainty. Okay, so the way that Eunice hedges it, I think it is, shows her discomfort as well, but also the way in which she's trying to get Blanche to go along with things. It's really important for theatrical purposes that Blanche in this scene appears on stage more confused than she did before the assault. Okay, we as the audience, we don't need to know the reason for we don't need to know we don't need to know exactly what her psychosis is. We don't need to know the kind of medical term for it, but what we need to see in terms of understanding the characters and the themes of the play is that Stanley's rape in the previous scene is what causes this decline on her. So when we see her more confused, when we see her entering into this state of psychosis, it makes that clear for us. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Okay, we taught in our last lesson before we had to leave about how Blanche has changed in this scene, and we talked about the fact that she in the previous poker scene, she very much wanted to engage with the men in the room. She was trying to be charming. She very much wanted their attention. Okay, now when she thinks that she's off to go and see Shep, we can see this change in her, because her voice dies out nervously. This is actually when she realizes there's a woman with him. Okay, so the pronouns are important. She starts saying, Blanche says, they, who's they? And then Eunice replies, there's a lady with him. And Blanche cannot imagine who this lady could be. Okay, so obviously the fact that the matron has turned up as well has really unsettled Blanche, and she's not sure whether to kind of, it pushes her out of her fantasy, basically. Blanche, we can see her uncertainty, okay, in her dash here. Possibly she can't complete that sentence, she doesn't know what to say. And then it says her voice dies out nervously, okay, so again the adverb showing us how she feels about it. What's really important, as you can see in my annotations, that she says, must we go through that room? Okay, she really doesn't want to have to encounter the men, but obviously it's a small place, okay. She is still fixated on her appearance though. How do I look? Okay, remember we said that at the beginning that kind of vanity that she displays is irritating for the audience. It makes it hard for us to like her. But here, when we see her so vulnerable, we see her clinging on to her beauty as one way of kind of enabling some sense of self-confidence. I think that we're going to feel pity for her. Okay, Blanche then moves fearfully. Okay, so again we've got the adverb showing us that she is incredibly anxious and vulnerable at this point, and that she doesn't want to approach the men. Interestingly, however, she does still maintain this kind of class juxtaposition, because she says to them, please don't get up. Remember, this is something that happens in the previous poker scene when the men were all there. Blanche suggested that they shouldn't get up, and Stanley very much made sure that they sat down. Okay, and I think that this happens again just to kind of confirm the opposing ways of life. We talked about how at the beginning of this scene it's kind of very macho. It's all about that kind of crude male dominance. You know, they're drinking, they're playing poker. And here we've got that opposition to that, okay? We've got Blanche's kind of aristocratic, genteel approach to things, emphasizing those opposing ways of life. And I think what that's doing is that's bringing us back to that thematic significance of the contrast between Stanley and Blanche. Again, really important adverb, so she crosses quickly, showing us her kind of nervousness. Interestingly though, the poker players do stand up, so the poker players stand awkwardly at the table, okay, so they do kind of validate her aristocratic tendencies and her desire for that kind of civilized response, all except Mitch, who remains seated looking at the table. So yet again, Williams is showing us the effect that all of this has had on Mitch as well. You know, we talked about that contrast between Stanley and Mitch last lesson, about how Stanley was completely uncompromising and really ruthless, whereas Mitch was clearly feeling unnerved by the way that Blanche was behaving and by her mania. And here we can see him kind of in a state of despair, either feeling really uncomfortable or feeling really guilty or just feeling really upset. And then obviously the doctor is there, okay, and we get the first interaction between them. And Blanche says, you are not the gentleman I was expecting, okay? And then clearly it's made evident in the stage directions that she panics. So this is when her little kind of fantasy world breaks down. So she suddenly gasps, starts back up the steps. And she speaks in a frightened whisper. Okay, so it's quite interesting as well that the women have been doing a lot of whispering, whereas the men have been having that kind of drunk, bawdy poker interaction. And remember, we spoke at the end of scene 10 about how one of the things that Williams is showing us is about the kind of vulnerability of women and about how they were reliant and dependent on men in the 1940s. And certainly in all of this kind of whispering, we definitely see their meekness coming through. Blanche suddenly does seem to understand a bit of what's going on, and I think that's shown through the fact that she speaks in declaratives here. That man isn't Shep Huntley, and you are not the gentleman I was expecting. Okay, so there's a sense of clarity there that maybe there wasn't before in her speech. Okay, next page. So I think we talked about this, the fact that the Vesuviana plays all the way through this scene, reminding us as the audience that this is Blanche's kind of finality. And